Welcome. This is something to talk about from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. I'm Reed Price, and today we're going to be talking about Kwanzaa. But before we get started, I want to thank the folks at Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island because they are sponsors of these programs, which we do several times a week. And you can also watch the programs later on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/BI Senior Center. And see what you can see. And that's where this will be after we get done with our little presentation today. In addition to learning about Kwanzaa, people who are here can also take part in some activities related to getting materials together to celebrate this holiday. Something to talk about is, as I said, sponsored by Fieldstone Communities. They offer assisted independent living on Rolling Bay, along with a vibrant memory care community. You can also ask about day stay and respite programs. To learn more, call Fieldstone at 206-594-1010. Check out the website at fieldstonecommunities.com. Email Ashley C. at fieldstonecommunities.com or stop by for a tour. Also, we, as a point of gratitude, always mention that we are meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Puget Sound Coast Salish people, specifically the Suquamish tribe, who have lived on the waters of the Salish Sea since time immemorial. We honor and are learning from the people of the clear salt water who have practiced stewardship of these lands and waters, as I said, since time immemorial. Helping us, as often is the case, is Ann Lovejoy. And Ann, if you can come forward and push one of those little red buttons, we'll be able to hear you. Right there. No, right on the little microphone in front of Barbara O. There you go.
Hi. Thank you. Thanks, Reed. This is great. Yeah, so we are having a little mini workshop here, and we're going to have a presentation from Marva Jones and a creative artist who have put together an amazing assembly of decorations of wonderful food, which I'm sorry you can't smell because it smells amazing, right? And all the, I don't know, would you call it regalia, kind of? All the pieces. What is it?
The different symbols.
Yeah, the different symbols that belong to Kwanzaa. So we're gonna move over, Reed's gonna come in and move the camera for us and look at this beautiful assembly of material and learn a little more about the principles behind each of these symbols, right? Because that's one of the richnesses of Kwanzaa, is that every day has a principle. Is that right?
Yes.
And every day there's a lesson, at least one maybe, and how to apply that principle. Isn't that right? So do you want to kind of lead us through this little beautiful display?
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, my name is Marva.
That's good.
My name is Marva Alvita Jones. And I live here in Washington State. And my community is Kingston community. So I don't live too far from here, but I moved to Kingston probably about 27 years ago. And when I went to Kingston, I recognized there was no people of color. And I decided, I have 4 children in this community, and they need to be represented in this community. And so I asked myself, what can I do to help my kids to value in the Kingston community where there was no children of color in the schools? So I decided, by meeting a nice gentleman many years ago, doing Kwanzaa in the community. And so I attached myself to and learned all about Kwanzaa. And so that's how I began starting Kwanzaa, knowing that I needed something for my children to be able to attach themselves to a value. So I'm going to share what Kwanzaa is all about. So I began my research, my journey. Why is this so important? Because as a child growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, I was not aware of what Kwanzaa was all about.
Was it even part of the culture in that, like, I don't remember when it got started. It's not that ancient.
It was not. 1966. It happened because this man named Malani, Dr. Malani, who was a professor in education and in culture. And he is the one who came up with this idea. He realized and recognized that children of color are not sitting down learning about who they are. And his reason for doing this during this particular time is because he said children are out of school during this time, during the Christmas holidays.
Oh, okay, that makes total sense.
And he felt like this is a time and an opportunity for parents to sit down with their children every single day, right after December 25th, right after Christmas, then they could sit down and talk about their family values. So his job was to give us some principles, he calls them, 7 principles. So we're going to talk about these principles today and how we celebrated Kwanzaa in our home. First of all, what is Kwanzaa? Kwanzaa is a joyous American holiday celebrated and created in 1966. It originated from research of an African American elder culture celebration and rituals. The 7 principles and symbols offer the opportunity to understand the significance of African American heritage and its importance in developing unity and purpose in the African American community. Again, Kwanzaa is celebrated each year from December 26th to January the 1st. Well, who founded Kwanzaa? I want to give this man honor because he is the one who founded Kwanzaa. His name is Dr. Malani Karanje, a professor of Black and Ethnic Studies at the University in California. He also served as an executive director of the Institute of Pan-African American Studies. Dr. Karanje has written several publications and lectures throughout America and in Africa.
Oh, so that's interesting. So he kind of took his studies back to Africa and found the roots of them?
Yes.
That's awesome.
But he recognized the need over here in the USA,
Right.
in every state. Wherever there's children of color, they're often, most people say they're underprivileged. What he wanted to do was help us go back and sit down with our families and families talk to their children how important they are in the family. So some of these symbols that you will see today is recognizing the value of children. For example, we'll talk about the corn. As you notice, I have 4 kids. And every year during Kwanzaa, we have 4 pieces of corn that represent our kids. And the corn is called, let's see. The corn is called bonsai. And the corn represents each child. And then you can cook the corn, and then the kids get to eat this corn. And you talk about where this corn came from. It came from the land in which our ancestors worked. And so it becomes value to us that corn is important to our family.
So there's a kind of a harvest festival root to this too, right? Thanking the earth and thanking.
Absolutely. So let me go back and talk about these candles, the significance of the candles. The red candles represents the blood in which my ancestors shared. Because the reality is they worked the fields, they tilled the land. They are the ones who grew the crops way back in slavery. So we wanted to inform and let you know that the red represents the land. The green represents the land. The red represents the blood that they shedded. They wasn't often, sometimes they were disciplined or whipped or beaten because of, for whatever reason, they didn't get enough crops. They didn't get enough cotton for the day. So the red represents the blood that my people shared. And then the black candle represents us as African Americans. So those are the symbols of why he chose these 3 colors. Also, if you notice, down at the bottom, I have a mat. And I have let me show you. The mat was important as well because they said these candles sits on a foundation. And who's our foundation? Our grandmothers. our great grandmothers. So he wanted to remind the children that you came from someone, and that someone is your ancestors, and you never forget it. So she often would weave the mat, which is called the keika, and this will sit on the bottom on the table representing our ancestors. So all these symbols have meaning. And I enjoy this because I was able to share those meanings with my 4 children. And now I share them with the community. I also share them with my grandchildren. So when you come into my house, I have Kwanzaa set up. And not only that, this picture is in my house, in the living room to reflect and remind my children.
I can show it.
Yes. This is the canary, which is the candle holder.
Is that better?
Yeah.
So you can see the candles and the candle holder.
Thank you for sharing that.
And this is in my house all year, so it's not something I put up at Kwanzaa time and then take it down. My grandchildren see this whenever they enter my house or enter my bedroom, it's there. Thank you. So I'm gonna just talk a little bit about a couple of more of the symbols. I talked about the corn. I wanna talk about the flag. It's called the Bendera. And the flag is red, green, and black. And it just represents our culture. And over in Africa, you will find those colors over in Africa. And he chose those 3 colors because of the red, green, black symbol to who we are as African Americans. But also I want to talk about the Kankambi cup. In our family, our 4 kids and my husband, every year we would drink out the Kankambi cup. My husband is the leader of our family, so he would drink first. And we just put apple cider some days, orange juice some days, soda one day. We always tried to make it fun for our kids. And my husband will open up Kwanzaa. He will call all the kids, children, tonight is Kwanzaa. And we often sat on the floor. And so he would say this particular word, Habanagani. And the children would say, what's the news? And he said, the news is Kwanzaa. And then he would go through the principles each day. And as we would go through each principle, he would say, tonight we're gonna drink out the Kakambi cup, which is the unity cup. So my husband would drink and we would teach our kids, you gotta hold it a certain way. You can't just hold it like this, but you have to wrap your hands around it. And so my husband would drink, and then I would drink, and then my oldest son, Rico, would drink, and then my oldest daughter, Tiffany, would drink, and then my second oldest daughter would be Sharita, she would drink, and then my son, Stephen, who was the baby, he would drink, until it was all gone. So that's a unity cup, saying that we all drink from the same cup. And
It
that's
was like a
unity.
chalice kind of.
Yes.
Like a
yes,
sacred cup.
Yes, and we wanted that to be, so they'll understand that we are trying to show them values that we want to have in our family. And then the next thing I would like to talk about, this is the canary, which is the candle holder, which are the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. And then we would talk about the fruit. This was important because we wanted our children to know that our ancestors worked really hard in the field to grow these crops. And they would harvest these crops and take the best. And today, children don't often work in a field harvesting anything. And so we put the fruit on the table to represent the richness of we have food and you are provided for. So we always have our table full of not just fruits, but also nuts. And then on the last day of Kwanzaa, they are able to eat these fruits and nuts. And I have a really cool nutcracker they get to use that I found out at a Goodwill, and then they get to crack the nuts. But we do it as a family. And we'll talk a little bit more about the last day of Kwanzaa. They call the candles Mishu Saba, which is Saba means 7. And there's more words that you'll learn. All these words are the African culture called Swahili language. So he went back and did his research, and I did a little bit of research on it. And all these words that my children were learning were Kwanzaa words, which are Swahili words. And then we wrote the English part of it so they'll know how to pronunciate all the words. So Saba means 7 days. Harambe means pulling together in unity. And when I first learned about Kwanzaa from this wonderful gentleman, I can't think of his name right now, we played games and he would say, everybody get a rope. And he would say, Harambe, and we would practice to see who could pull the rope to the other side, which is strength. So I learned so much from him way back in the day. And his name would come to me because I want to give him honor as well. So also we give gifts, and these are called the swade. So every year, we don't go to the store and buy presents. We just never did that. Our kids had to make gifts for one another. So this is a gift that I also celebrated with my sister who has 7 kids one year. So one of her children made this for me, 7 days of Kwanzaa. And this is one of the gifts that we made in our family, just using some recyclable materials. This is a picture frame, and then they put Velcro. And then one of the kids made it and put a picture of the child that they had to make it for. So this is just some of the gifts. And then this is also something one of my nephews made, and he's passed away now. So this is very important to me, Joshua. Josh, my nephew, and he put his name at the bottom. So these are just gifts that I can never give up because it was made and created by their hands and by their hearts.
And so meaningful for them to know they actually make something and that gets cherished the way that a piece of plastic from Kmart maybe doesn't get cherished.
Absolutely. So let's go through how we talk about Kwanzaa in our family. So the first night after we do our opening, the children were very involved. So we didn't, as long as they were over age, like my son Stephen at the time was 5 or 6. So they were the children that liked the candle. We liked the first candle, which is our unity candle. Now, let me share this with you. Some people like the red first, green. I don't really think it really matters. But some people like the black candle first. I always like to hold the black candle to the last day because it's like this is our celebration of people. But I have noticed that some people lit their candle. Can I get this? So I like the red candle. And of course, we blow them out at night. And then we would come back the next morning and light the red.
So do you light them do you light the candles in the morning?
No, we light it when we come together as a family.
Okay, in the evening?
Yes,
And then
yes.
they stay on, you leave them burning all night?
No, we do not. After we complete Kwanzaa for the day, then we blow them out.
Okay.
Safety is very important. So the first night after we go through our greeting, Habanagani, and then we would light the first candle. And the first candle would be umojo. And umojo means unity. So we would sit down with our 4 kids and myself and my husband and say, how can we have unity in this family? What can you do, Rico? And Rico always was the first one because he was the oldest. And then we would say, how can you have unity in your school? What can you do in your school to represent unity? And then we would say, how can you give back to the community and have unity? Because we wanted our kids to know that's a part of life. When you give back, you reap. So we would talk, they would share with us how they can have unity in the family. And so then my husband and I, we will also share our unity, how we can have unity and how we work together as a family. No one is left behind. And when you see someone in our family in need or is hurting, you come together. So they all had chores in our family. So if one person, Rico often did the laundry, and there was a lot of laundry because our family was really busy, then the girls would say, Rico, can we help you put the laundry away? That represents unity. And so each child came up with their idea of unity, which is umoja. Then after we go through that, then we would drink from the cup. But what we would do some education around it. So one day, we might talk about the history of African Americans. So in my book, I have Did You Know? And it's talking about all the things that African Americans have invented and created. But often it doesn't get noticed or shared with other people. So that's my job. My husband's job is to say, did you know there was an African American made the leather machine to invent leather so we can walk today with shoes? And my kids felt really proud of that because they didn't know if we made anything that was purposeful. So we share the history of Jan Mercinger, who made the bottom of the leather of the shoe. And then we talk about we're wearing them today. And so that was some history they can carry with them in their hearts. So we will always share something every night about not just people who created, but we would share books. So we'll go through that as I go through each night. So once we go through that with our kids, then we drink from the Kangambi cup. And then we might have some dinner that night and eat together as a family because what we recognize that families were not sitting down at the table eating and having conversations. So then the next night of Kwanzaa, they would go to bed. It's about 6 o'clock in the evening. And then all of a sudden, they'll come back together. And my husband would say, open it up by saying the Kwanzaa word. And then we would say, tonight is the second night of Kwanzaa, and we're gonna light our next candle. The next night we would say Kugi Chagalia, which is my favorite. And so one of the kids would light the candle and say, Kugi Chagalia. And then we would say, what does that mean? They know what it means now. Self-determination. So we encourage our children, our family, my 4 kids, they didn't like, but that's okay. We encourage our children to really think about what does that mean, self-determination. And so my husband would give the definition of self-determination and how can they practice it again at home, at school, and in the community. And now my kids are older, over 30, and it's so funny because whenever they see a need, and Miss Karen, no, they would hearken to the need. They would see a need and they say, okay, Miss Karen needs some help in the community, and they would show up, my 2 daughters. They just did a December 25th, a young lady was supposed to decorate for Christmas at our community Christmas play, and the lady called at the last minute that morning, and so my pastor wife called me. I called my daughters, and they came, and my daughter ended up setting a table for 100 people.
Oh my goodness, that's service.
That's the service that we taught them by doing Kwanzaa. One night talking about Kugi Chagalia, and Sharita had self-determination. And we stayed there and also supported her and helped her. So my girls are community girls. And even my son, Rico, who lives in Seattle, if I call him, where are you at? He's helping children with basketball. He's a basketball coach for young girls. So they're all doing community work. And I really believe that it came from our sitting down with them every year for almost 15, 20 years, talking about Kwanzaa.
And do they do Kwanzaa with their kids?
My son does not because his wife is of a different religion. But when he comes over or I get his kids, sure we do Kwanzaa. Because I wanted them to have something that they can value, which is Kwanzaa. But my daughter does Kwanzaa and my Sharita does Kwanzaa. In fact, we're going to be together with Karen Akue on the 29th doing Kwanzaa at United Way. So, and Sharita is the one who's making sure that it happens. So we're having that at her job at United Way. And Tiffany will be there with her boys and the community. So we all come together, and this night we will talk about books. We will have books in the living room on the second day of Kwanzaa, and books about people that have shown and demonstrate self-determination, whether it be in sports, whether it be in education, whether it be in somebody that they know that is demonstrating that, Kugi Chagalia. So we would talk about that, and then we would share with them how we also practice Kugi Chagalia in our family. When we were struggling and had a hard time, we talked about how we didn't give up. It was hard. We built our house. And I recall when we built our house, we shared this with our kids because we were the only African-American, well, it was 2 African-American families. But we They made us feel, they didn't want to paint our house. The inside, people were just being people. And we stood up for ourselves and we didn't give up. And so then the person that was over the housing program said, nobody can move in until the Joneses' houses are painted. But we did not give up. And that was really difficult to go against the other families that was also building with us. So that was a way of teaching our children, no matter what, you don't give up. You have self-determination. And I have to say, my kids have that. So then we would talk about that principle. And then the next day we would come together. And my husband would say, Habani Ghani. And they would say, well, what's the news? And then we would have our red candle, green candle. And then this night we're like our red candle. So either Stephanie, this night Sharita would light it. She's the third oldest. And then we would give her the word. Get the light. Yeah, okay, thank you. And then we would say, Sharita, the word today is Ujamaa. And she would say Ujamaa, which is, remember, is not our English language, it's Swahili. And she would say Ujamaa. And we would say, Sharita, Ujamaa means collective work and responsibility.
Wow.
That's so important to teach our young people to work and to be collective, to work with a group. And I'm gonna read what this one means. It says, collective work and responsibility. If a student has a task and completes it, and then, pick it up a little bit. This is something we were talking about in their school. If a student has a task and completes it, and then sees another student having trouble with that task, with your permission, have them to go over and ask, do you need help? So we were pushing this for our kids, encouraging our kids to teach collective work and responsibility. Because what we taught them is many hands make light work. So go over and help that person.
But this is like community building from the very basis of the family, right?
Yes.
And what incredible lessons. I just think about how empty some of the secular holidays are that don't have any, they don't teach us anything except a minute of generosity, maybe for a day, but this is like life work, deep
And
life
we would
work,
say, how are you gonna implement this throughout the year?
right?
How are you gonna implement this in the home, in the community, and in our family?
Yeah.
So those three principles were taught every night. So that's called yes.
So do you keep any kind of written track of, what your conversations were one year and your maybe aspirations, and then the next year compare how they might be the same or different, or think back upon, how one year's Kwanzaa, what did it put in motion for the year that followed?
Well, throughout the year, we still talked about Kwanzaa principles. If we saw something happening in our home or someone not practicing Kwanzaa principles, we would say, well, what did we learn in Kwanzaa? We would say that to our children. And I have to say today, my kids are very collective and they really work together. My son lives in Seattle. We go to his son's football games. All of us would get together and say, you're going to Xavier's game, he's graduating this year. When my granddaughter graduated from Clark University 2 years ago in Atlanta, Georgia, we all went.
Oh, nice.
That's called collective work and responsibility. We all got together, put our monies together, rented an Airbnb to make sure we were all together, and we showed up at her graduation. So if we probably had not taught that value, they would have said, oh, I don't have the money, I can't go. But when someone didn't have the money, we made sure everybody was able to leave. Everybody went. And we brought a lot of other people as well. We brought community with us.
Right.
So that's what I'm talking about. We showed that and demonstrated throughout the year as they were growing up. So that's the outcome of that.
So Marva, I think maybe Lena or Judy has a comment.
Okay.
I do. Hello. Thank you. Hi, Miss Marva. I'm not sure if you remember me from the tribe days when I went to the
Yes.
tribe and you were at ELC. Well,
Yes.
the reason I wanted to jump in at this point in your presentation was you mentioned teaching the kids about their community efforts and so forth. And I remember you actually did that while you were with the tribe, with the kids, the little kids. We're talking 2 and 3 and 4 year olds. My
Yes.
son was one of them, and took
Yes.
that away with him to this day. So I mean, that just goes way back, and it just hit me personally. So thank you for that and sharing that, because that just triggered. He's 20 now, but it triggered way back when. And so thank you for sharing that, because it made an impact. It made an impact. He's a kind heart because of, I think, because of learning things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say anybody can celebrate Kwanzaa. It's not just for African American. It was originated for our group of people. But I want to say these principles cross everybody, every culture. And I think the younger we teach it, the greater access it is to our community and to our families.
I'm wondering how many hundreds of people you have taught these things to. Maybe thousands, right?
Yes.
That's great.
I was a 3rd grade teacher last year, and now I'm a kindergarten teacher. Of course I did Kwanzaa. And I had them all dressed up in clothing. Now, I also brought clothing for you, but I didn't bring it in. But I want people to get the full impact of Kwanzaa. I have 4 totes of Kwanzaa clothes for children and adults. But we will take Kwanzaa clothes at the on Friday. So I want to go to my next principle. So again, we would blow out our candles, and then the fourth day of Kwanzaa, my husband will say Abani Gani, and then this is our youngest son, Stephen. At the time, he was only like 7. And my husband would say, tonight is Nia. And Nia means,
Ujama.
no, we do Nia.
Oh, you guys do Nia?
Yeah, you can do them in order, and that's fine. But I'm just going by my book. Nia means purpose. And we would teach our kids, everybody has a purpose. Even the bully that you see at school, that bully has a purpose. That bully may not understand or have not identified a purpose, but everybody has a purpose. And my kids all have a purpose. And it was so funny because one year, my kids, my husband and my kids got together and made me this cute little sweatshirt. And on my sweatshirt, it had like little bear cartoons. And my daughter Tiffany, who's the oldest, loves to talk. And one of her gifts is she's an organizer. At my job, she's an organizer in the community because she loves to talk. And that's what we always say, Tiffany, you're gonna work out in the field with helping people organize. And we would tell her her purpose. And then Sharita, her purpose is she's very creative. Sharita can sing, Sharita can draw. In fact, in my book, you would see that Tiffany's purpose showed up in the book by writing a poem. And she said, she wrote the poem in my book, who was it that took my culture? Who was it that took my culture? And Sharita drew the picture.
Oh, nice.
And then I put them together one Kwanzaa year, and then I put this in my book. Yes. And Rico always been a person that loves people, and he was great in sports, so that's what he does. And he also worked for Coca-Cola, so he's still working for people, and he's really great at what he does. Oh, and then my youngest son, Stephen, he was a drummer in our church, and he played for many, many years until he passed away at the age of, he was what? 21, 23, 20. Yeah, so, but we still represent at Kwanzaa, and it strengthened our family because we have that unity within our family. But we knew what their purpose was, and we kind of guided them into that particular area. Yes.
Can I ask a question? Because you made a statement that even a bully has purpose.
Yes.
And so when we know that that each and every one of us are born with purpose, how do we help support our young people that sometimes get off track and not even understanding that they've been born with purpose? And how do we help to shepherd them, even though they're not our children?
Mm-hmm.
How do we begin to support, because we work as a village, and it takes a village to raise a child.
Absolutely.
And as we see our children, as they grow and as they're coming up, how can we as a community help nurture our young people and to allow them to discover what their purpose is?
Oh, I see it all the time in kids. I always tell my third graders last year, I can see your brain. And I know what you're thinking. What am I thinking, Miss Jones? But every child that was in my class, I could see their purpose. And I would tell them their purpose. And they said, nobody ever told me that, Miss Jones. Because what they do the most in what they're passionate about, I can read it just like that. And now I'm telling my kindergartners that.
I wish you were my third grade.
But I can see it in the kids. I would tell them and I would pull them aside once I discovered it. And I had a little girl named Brooklyn, an amazing Native American little girl, and she loved history. I say, Brooklyn, you're not Nina, you're Brooklyn. You don't need to do what Nina does. You need to go ahead and study history. This is something you're passionate about. When it was time to do a project, she would do extracurricular work and bring in history that she created a board, a literature board about history. And when we did anything in the classroom around history, I could see her light up. That's something she would do in life. And so what was interesting on Christmas, a couple of weeks ago, I took some of my third graders to the old town of where I live at in Kingston. What's the old town? Not Silverdale, in Kingston, Port Gamble.
Oh, right.
So I have one child that I know loved plays. So I created a play around him. But not only that, they had Charlie Brown in Port Gamble, which is a historical town. Mm-hmm. So I took Brooklyn and I took the child who loves plays. So anyway, I took like 7 girls who I knew had different gifts in my class. And so each one, individually, I talked to them when they were at this play. But Brooklyn, we went to an art gallery. I have a child who loves art. So I planned it. What is each gift for each child? And Brooklyn was in this art gallery downtown, which is a friend of ours who has a beautiful gallery in Paulsville. And we stopped there and sang some Christmas carols because one of my kids likes singing. So we sang a Christmas carol to the people in the building. And then we were taking pictures and Brooklyn was not in the picture. And we said, where's Brooklyn? Brooklyn was looking at the art that spoke to her. It was a historical picture that she had seen. And she said, Miss Jones, Miss Jones, Miss Jones. She said, I know that picture. I've seen that picture. That's my grandfather reached out to me in a dream. And he told me that I'm not done yet and gave her that she could not stop staring at this picture of a horizon. So she picked up on that art picture that she noticed. And that's what I'm saying. I said, that's your gift. And I whispered in her ear, yeah, it's your gift. So keep leaning toward pictures or things that when you hear, it might not be for your friend, but it's for you. So that's the kind of stuff. You can see if a child sings all the time. If you see if a child is a servant, I had a kindergartner in my class. She always got up and helped everybody. And one day she went to go help me put something away and she dropped it. It was like some toys or something. And I was like, Amanda, why did you pick that up? It was already together. And then when I got home, I said, oh, the Lord showed me that that's her gift. I went back to school to this little kindergarten and I said to her in front of the whole class, Amanda, I'm so sorry that I talked to you like that in front of the kids. It wasn't a mean talk, but I was kind of like, why did you do that? I said, that's your gift to serve. I'm sorry. And I would never do that again. Can I give you a hug? And I did it in front of all the kids because I recognize that's her gift. And I don't want to be a person that's trouble her or stun her for helping. And now when she comes over, you got it, Amanda? You got this.
But you also gave her a gift of apology in front of everybody.
I sure did.
And you modeled how to do that as
Absolutely.
with dignity. That's huge too, because a lot of kids would never see that in their life.
Yep.
Right.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
I made the mistake in public in front of the kids. I needed to apologize.
That's beautiful.
Yes. So this night we would talk about my grandmother and their great grandmother and their grandmother. So this is something before my grandmother died many years ago. She created this. This is a doily, and kids don't know what a doily is. So I would tell my kids, this is a doily. They were often sitting in their house on the table, and they would put, again, remember I talked about the foundation. They would put an object on it. And then things that I'd inherit from my grandmother, which I have a coffee pot that we bought my mom when she was little, Burls and I would also bring that out to my children. And I would talk about, there's a picture that I have here that is black and white and it's distorted. But back then I would show my kids, this is my auntie, and how black and white pictures at that time was important. So I keep these symbols with me. And so we would talk about, they can ask questions about my mom, they can ask questions about my dad, they can ask questions about my grandmother. And there's a character that I play called Goosenberry, an old lady. And I will also talk about, and she's pretty well known in the community back in the day. And I would say that's how I got my character from Miss Gooseberry, my grandmother and my landlord. And I put them two together. And then I would talk like this. What's your name, baby? And that was my mother. And I was showing how my mother would walk. So my grandmother and my mom was never forgotten. And then I would talk about the food recipe that my mom gave me, sweet potato pie. So my kids love sweet potato pie. So for Christmas, I would put a pie at their bedroom doors, because that's what they like, and that came from my mom. So we would talk about my ancestors on that day. And then, of course, the next day comes, and then the fifth day we would talk about Kuumba. Kuumba is creativity. And so they would light a red candle, and this is day 5, and my husband would say, Abani Ghani, what's the news? And then Rika would say, Kuumba, which is creativity. And we talk about how we can use our creativity in our home, in our schools, and in our community. And I can say that Sharita used her creativity last Sunday, on Sunday. She came up with the idea, how to set the tables, what to put in it, and it was amazing. It was beautiful, like somebody would come and set up your program and charge you a lot of money. She did that. And we talk about the creativity that she can draw. Keep drawing, Sharita, never give up. We talk about how Rico does football and basketball, and he was very creative in making those touchdowns. So again, we'll talk about how we can utilize that in our home. So then, God bless you. This night, we would talk about the foods that we like to eat. So one of the foods that we like to eat is sweet potato pie. And so I made a sweet potato pie. And for Christmas, would you believe my 2 daughters took a sweet potato pie home? I made only 4. For Thanksgiving, I made 8 because we had a lot of people.
It smells really good.
Yes, thank you. And it was so funny that this year I said, I'm going to make them 4 because I'm watching what I eat. And they was like, Mom, did you make one just for us? And of course I did. So they took a sweet potato pie home. So we would just talk about the creativity that we can utilize in our family. And anybody can do that. So then we'll come together another night and we will light a green candle. And this night it will be Tiffany. And then this night is fun. We would say, what's tonight? What's the night? And this will be Ujama. Wait, make sure. Umani. So we're talking about, this is called, not Umani, I'm sorry, Ujama. This one right here is cooperative economics. We would tell our kids, save your money. And we will leave an inheritance for our kids. We're not just talking about it and not doing it. My husband and I will leave an inheritance to our kids if anything happens to us. Because a lot of African American families don't do that for their kids. So we tell them, you have to leave an inheritance for your children. You have to have a savings account for your children. And make sure when you are buying things in the community that you patronize African American businesses. And I would have to say Tiffany did it. So I worked for Callis Public School and all our kids wear uniforms. So instead of Tiffany going to outskirting it to a business that may be of whites or another culture, she went to our friend Ron, which is, what's the name of Unique Experience. So when the uniforms are being purchased and bought, which is every year, tons and tons of uniform, and they put the logo on all uniforms. Tiffany did it. We are patronizing this man's business. And this man is growing wealth from this business every year. So those were the lessons that we taught. She had the opportunity to be, she's one of the coordinators in the school that works with the families. So she reached out and told her boss, I know a family that can make our uniforms, that can put the emblem on. So yes, do we do that? Yes. So I went to Georgia this year and I said, I want to buy this African dashiki, this is called a dashiki, from an African American business. So I went into the business and I purchased it and some other things. But mainly, and we went, well, we visited their museum, which is called the Harriet Tubman Museum and Tyler Perry Museum. So we went there and read all the history of Macon, Georgia, because that's where my mom was from. That was her town. She was born and raised. So we looked up all the history, and I called Miss Akue, you gotta be here. This is amazing. And then they had a lot of African American inventions that they made. And so I'm putting together a video on other inventions that African American people made. So I took pictures. So that was our night. And then this night we will play games this night. So I created games. And so in order for the kids to get the gifts that they made one to another, like one year my daughter made some socks for all. She decorated them and put words of affirmation on them. So then sometime my husband and I, we made them some gifts and we would play the African music, and then whoever it stopped on, they got that gift. So every night we played games and we sang songs. So I made like a song, Kwanzaa is here, Kwanzaa is here, hip, hip, hooray, hip, hip, hooray, Kwanzaa is here, Kwanzaa is here, hip, hip, hooray, hip, hip, hooray. And those are in my book. I created about 3 songs that we would sing to open up Kwanzaa as well. So then, yay, the last night comes. And then Sharita would light that candle. And I like to say this one for last purposely. This is called Nia. Nia means faith, because everybody have different beliefs and we respect that and we honor that. But in our home, our faith was very, very important to the children, because we wanted them to know in our family, if you ever get yourself in a pickle jar or if you ever need help, you have to believe in God. Because God is the one who helps us to gain wealth, helps us to get jobs, helps us when we're in the pickle jar. And I always tell my kids, don't get in the pickle jar, and how to get out the pickle jar. And so you have to believe. Most people believe in something, and this just happened to be our faith. And so we would talk about, this is our last night, we would have good food like sweet potato pie. Miss Karen, would you like to get the black-eyed peas? And we would cook collard greens, cornbread, and fried chicken. Those were our staples. And our corn on the cob. So we would sit, and you can show that, yeah. And Miss Karen know how to make good black-eyed peas. When I put my recipe, I was like, Karen. And so we would make our black-eyed peas and all of our foods, and we would sit down and eat, and we would play music, African music, and we would just dance. My kids and I and my husband, we would just go to the beat of the music, but we would all of us would have on our garb. Everybody in my family have their own African outfits. And so we would just have a good time on the last night of Kwanzaa. And then I might bring out how back in the day, This was made by African American, and I would introduce them to an egg beater, and how I would allow them to use this when we make our sweet potato pie. And then we'll just show them famous art. Like whenever I go, someone gave me this. Did you give me this?
Yes.
Yeah. You put your pillow in it. But I hold those things from friends that are important. I put this on my table every year.
I was really curious about the egg beaters. I was wondering when we were gonna get to the egg.
Oh, yeah. Well, because I like using it with my preschoolers and my third graders, and they just love it. So I would bring in eggs and I would introduce them to how they didn't have these type of tools, and how they would have to stir up biscuits and different things. And I would give them the African American who created it. And they,
That's
So-
awesome.
so I would just bring different things that's relatable to children, like the refrigerator, things. And I also have that in my book. If you want to know who created different things that we use today, I have a saying in my book, Did You Know? It's called Did You Know? So I have that inside my book. So if you're interested in my book is only not that much, $13, and I created this using my creativity. And so inside the book, it tells you how to celebrate Kwanzaa, why is Kwanzaa important, what do the words mean. It talks about why we wear the African clothing, more words to learn and know. Again, how you implement it. If you want to do a big event in your school, which I've done that before, also, which we're going to be doing a community event on the 29th at 6 o'clock in Bremerton at the United Way building. All the games I came up with, Cree games. You can do word search. All my 3 songs I came up with. And then the menus of the foods if you want to cook the foods. So I tried to incorporate like our peas, potato salad. My daughter makes a potato salad every year, and my famous sweet potato pie. And then at the end, culture. And then I think I left one out, Did You Know? Like who created, and that's gonna be in my book this year. So this is how we celebrate Kwanzaa, and we do talk about Africa. And my dream is to go to Africa this year. My dream trip is to go to Africa and learn more and discover more about me, myself. And so that I can be able to bring that back to children. That's what I want to do, is to bring it back to children and continue to teach children one more year, and then I'm going to retire. That's what I think. And this is just art that I would share with my kids. I would always bring art in front of them so they would understand why we do art. And it's okay when you're doing art at school. And what I learned and discovered is that now the kids that I'm around, a lot of them are starting to paint their faces brown. And I never saw that before. And one little girl said, she said, Miss Jones, I made it just like you. It was a brown color. And that is a beautiful color. So, and that is Kwanzaa. Any more questions?
That's wonderful.
Oh,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much. This is amazing. I'm looking for, we're gonna do a workshop now to put some of these books together. Maybe we can have a few of them here at the center to sell, because I think after seeing this, there's gonna be people definitely wanting to buy them. Thank you so much, Martha. This is amazing.
And thank you, Miss Karen Vargas Akue. She's my co-partner in making sure that the word is out.
Yes.
She's like my friend who helps me with this, and I'm just grateful for her, she and her husband. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marva,
Marva, thank you so much, Marva. We really appreciate all the work that you put into presenting this to us, and I'm looking forward to exploring your book.
Thank
So
you,
if-
Miss Marva.
You're welcome.
Good to see you.
Yes, thank you.